Hey everybody, it's Jay Baer from Convince and Convert, joined today by a very special guest, Jacob Morgan, author of the book you see right there, The Collaborative Organization, and also the CEO, founder, and grand poobah of Chess Media Group. Jacob, how are you, good sir?
I'm doing well. I wish I had a physical copy of the book to hold up, but unfortunately I don't even have that yet, so I just have a flyer to show.
Well, as we're recording this, the book is imminent. It will be out soon. As soon as this video launches on Convince and Convert, I think it'll be out same week or something like that. So by the time you people see this video, the book will actually exist in bookstores globally, or at least in North America.
Yes.
I have had the opportunity to read the book in electronic format. Love it. Love it. It's like nothing else on the market, and I really mean that. And it is a serious, serious book. You put some big-time work into that.
I did, yeah. I mean, as you said, there's nothing out there like this book yet. I mean, it's the first really comprehensive strategy guide to collaboration in the workplace. So it's exciting. I'm very much looking forward to it actually coming out. And there was a big need in the space. Nobody's written anything about this, so I saw a gap and wrote the book.
Nice job. Well, and it's useful too because it's the kind of work that you guys do at Chess, right? I mean, so the book is at some level about the kind of consulting you do, and even the kind of consulting projects that you take on are quite different than the kind of things that we do at Convince to Convert or other people sort of on the social media. That's almost like a dirty word now, the social media side of the business. You guys are obviously much more internally facing, more on the social business side of the aisle.
Yeah, no, exactly. And ever since the big uptick of social media, we started seeing a lot of companies started, bring these tools and platforms and behavior changes and technologies into the enterprise. But if you talk to an executive or decision maker at a company nowadays and you say, hey, where do you go to find out about this stuff? Where do you go to get resources? There's really nothing out there, right? I mean, you might be able to have conversations with some people, some other practitioners at another company, but there's no resource to go to that helps you figure out how to make a strategy, how to evaluate vendors, how to build a team. There's nothing out there. There's really nowhere for you to go. And so it's a big challenge for a lot of companies, and it's something that I hear constantly, time and time again. Can you point me to a resource that helps me address this, or do you have any links to that? And I would say, I honestly don't really know much stuff out there, so I think the book is a great way to fill that gap.
I don't want to make you summarize a 300-page book in a 30-second answer, but
I can try.
Why do people need to collaborate internally, right? I mean, why is this important? What are sort of the business benefits of that type of, because I know, having done a little bit of that consulting myself, people say, is this more trouble than it's worth? And I think you would obviously say, no, it's not, but why is that true?
Well, so I think there are two parts to that. So the very core part of, and one of the kind of foundations behind the book was this whole kind of message that collaboration makes the world a better place. And what I meant by that was that if we can make our employees more engaged at work, if we can make them more passionate about the work that they're doing, if we can make their jobs easier at work, then it should ideally decrease the stress that they have outside of work. Less arguments with spouses, more time to spend with friends and family. If you have a more flexible work environment, they have more time for themselves to learn and grow. And it makes just people happier better in general. It just makes them happier. They like what they're doing, and they have a greater work-life balance. So, that idea at the end of the day isn't necessarily enough for executives or decision makers at companies. You can't just go to them and say, hey, collaboration's great, it'll make the world better, do it. So what I wanted to do is take that message and that concept and put some strategic and tactical elements behind it to make that idea go from an idea to an action at the enterprise. And so it was actually very timely because we see a lot of these problems within the enterprise, right? Like duplication of content issues, employees that aren't engaged. It's hard for them to find and search for information. We spend so much time in front of email. I think a recent stat by Forrester said that we spend around 33% of our work week just looking for information. Like not even doing work, just finding, searching.
I believe it.
And so there are all these problems within the enterprise. Gallup said 72% of employees are disengaged, which they consider as essentially sleepwalking through their jobs. So 72% of American workers are just sleepwalking through their jobs, which is a sad and scary number, right?
Yeah.
It's huge. And other things like organizational alignment, being able to find subject matter experts within your company, all these different things within the enterprise are huge, huge problems today. And now that we have these tools and these new strategies in place, we can solve a lot of these issues and make the company a better place to work.
The organizational alignment part of that is really interesting to me because it touches on a lot of the themes that we have in my book, The Now Revolution, about social media and being a social organization is a lot more about corporate culture than it is about technology. And what you talk about in collaborative organization is that the ability to collaborate, the ability to use technology to work together actually breeds cultural alignment, that you actually are almost using software to get people on the same page, which is really interesting because we always think of alignment as more sort of squishy, touchy-feely values and mission statement kind of stuff. But what you're saying is let's work together, and in so doing, it actually gets everybody thinking the same way. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I think that you go hand in hand. It's sort of like, what comes first, is it the culture or the technology? And, I think that you go hand in hand. There's certain cultural things that you can do within your enterprise to help change things and move them in the right direction. So just get leadership support and, you get executives on board behind these things. But at the same time, these new technologies and these new tools allow you to do things that help impact your culture, like getting access to your entire employee workforce, seeing what everybody's working on, what they're thinking, what they're doing. Those things help change the culture within the enterprise. So, you can talk about wanting to change culture as much as you want, but at the same time, if you have a large organization with 50, 100,000 employees plus, there's no way to get all these people communicating, sharing, and talking and communicating without deploying these types of tools. So these tools help change culture while culture is inherently being changed within the enterprise. So they really go hand in hand. It's really hard to completely change culture without some of these technologies and pieces of software in place. And, the same is true. You can't just deploy the technology without considering the culture as well.
One of the things that you talk about in the book that is very interesting and I think doesn't get mentioned enough is the notion that this isn't really a project. It's a process, that the journey never ends. There's this continuous evolution of collaboration, and I think you probably see companies making this mistake, trying to do all of it at one time, like bite off the entire sandwich. Like, okay, we're gonna this quarter we're gonna start to collaborate, right? And it's like too much too fast. How do you counsel people to roll that out in a more meaningful, approachable way?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's phases, right? I mean, it's just like doing anything else. You can't just, I would love to do an Ironman someday, right? I'm not just gonna like go book a ticket tomorrow and all of a sudden
Get
go
in the
try to jump
water.
on the Iron. Yeah, it's to go swim a couple miles and run miles, but there's no way I'm gonna be able to do all that, right? So the same is true for these collaborative efforts within the enterprise. I think a lot of the organizations that we started working with, I think they acknowledge and understand and respect the fact that this isn't something that is a short-term project, especially the larger enterprises that we work with. I mean, we have a couple of organizations that we work with. One is a 180/200,000 person company. And they very much realize that this is not something that's going to change overnight, especially with 200,000 people, right? It's a massive global company. There's just no way. But they start to introduce and start to change things gradually over time. For example, let's start to introduce this concept of employees being able to connect and share, and then let's start to introduce this concept of integration with other tools and platforms. Then let's introduce this concept of rewarding employees for how well they collaborate with each other. Then let's introduce this concept of having employees provide feedback to help build and shape the product for the future. So there's steps, because especially when you look at employee adoption, right? I mean, if you deploy something tomorrow, you might get a couple people to use it, but are you going to get everybody using it in a week, in 2 weeks, in a month, in 6 months? Probably not.
So there's got to be somebody to collaborate with, right? Otherwise, it's kind of a lonely environment.
Exactly. It's kind of like going on to Twitter, and then we're the only 2 people that are on there. It's like, hey, I'll tweet to you.
Those days actually happened, though, and it worked out for Twitter. Maybe not the best example.
Yeah, that's true. But think of like a controlled Twitter example where it's only a couple people and no more. Right?
Yeah.
Eventually, it's just going to be like, there's not a lot of benefit to this. And part of the benefit of these collaborative tools is that they allow you to communicate and share and collaborate at scale, at massive, massive scale that you just couldn't do in the past. So there's definitely a phased approach to making these things work. Looking at the technology, looking at the strategies that you have in place. One of the things that I was amazed with when doing a lot of research and previous consulting around this stuff was that so many organizations start with looking at technology before looking at the strategy. And it's just, it's shocking. And it's the same in like in the social media space, right? You pick the technology and then you try to figure out where the technology
I
can
need
plug in.
Vitru, I need Radian 6, I need Sysomos, I need Argyle Social. It's like, to do what? I don't know, but I need some software.
Yeah, and you can imagine on the enterprise space, these things they can be very, very costly. And when you start to integrate these things and start to put your data into them, they can, these things can become pretty complex and pretty expensive. So if you pick a technology
It's
and
like
spend
HAL
time,
9000, right? It starts taking over. It starts to,
exactly, and then all of a sudden if you decide, hey, this isn't the right technology for me, I need to switch. Yeah, HAL's going to get pretty upset, and it's not going to be that easy to just take stuff and move it to another platform because there are no collaboration standards. You can't just, it's not like an Excel file where you can just take from one and put it into the other. It doesn't work like that. So absolutely, there's very much a phased approach for organizations. Some organizations start off with a pilot, so, developing some use cases, then gradually start to roll this out more broadly to the rest of the organization. So there's very much a phased approach.
You mentioned rewards at one point. Do you think it's important to build gamification into the enterprise to have some sort of market forces in there that encourages employees to collaborate and respond and participate?
I think so, yeah. And there are a lot of quite a few interesting discussions and debates around gamification. One of the things that I wrote about a little while ago is the risks of gamification for the enterprise, and it's something that for some reason nobody's talking about. Right? What are the risks of deploying these types of game concepts and game mechanics to the enterprise? What happens if we start to reinforce and reward behaviors that we didn't intend to reward and reinforce? For example, work-life balance is a big issue in many companies today, right? Employees are really struggling to, work and have time for their personal lives. But if you introduce these types of gaming components that reward employees for working and being active and always maintaining their presence, you can start to see that your work-life balance starts to get a little muddled, because what happens when you have employees, they're spending more time working so they can get more points outside of work. Is that a behavior that we want to reinforce? Well, maybe not intentionally, but that's part of what could be happening within the enterprise. Kathy Sierra gave an excellent example of gamification around reading. So not specifically applicable to the enterprise, but the whole concept was, do we want to reinforce and reward things that should be inherently valuable, like reading or helping others? Should we get reward from helping others just because we're helping others? Why do we need points behind it? Why do we need some sort of gaming behind it? And what that does is, it takes away from the inherent value of what these things are supposed to do.
Yeah, if you put points against it, are you saying that you shouldn't do that unless points are accrued, right? It's almost like giving kids allowance, right? So you give them allowance to do chores, or it's like, that's just the cost of doing business by living in this house, right? It's the same kind of idea.
Yeah, exactly. And so, a lot of these things are applying to the enterprise. And, we really don't know what all these risks of gamification in the enterprise are going to be yet, because this is all stuff that's been relatively, within the last few years, a lot of these things have been implemented. I think gamification is interesting. I certainly think it can be and should be applied to the enterprise, and it is being applied. But, some organizations are struggling with, do we want to do physical, tangible goods and rewards, or do we want to do other things like, status and access and stuff like that? And Gabe Zickerman, I should say, who actually runs the Gamification Summit and wrote a great book on gamification, talks about the importance of starting with non-tangible rewards first before moving towards tangible rewards. And I think he makes a great point. And, part of the reason for that is you have this issue of it becoming very, very expensive when you start to physically reward employees. Yeah. And not only that, but if you, as an employee, if you do something and get a reward, over time, that reward is going to diminish in value. So you're going to expect something greater and more valuable. Yeah. And it's something that just doesn't scale, not only for one individual, it's very hard to make that scale across an enterprise. Eventually you're going to have employees that have been in the company for 5 years that are saying, hey, where's my Ferrari? Where's my Mercedes? Right? So it's very hard to make that scale across the enterprise. But the intangible side of it, such as status, such as access, such as, badges, that's something very easy to scale. It's not something that's very expensive to the enterprise. And it's something that employees, at the end of the day, they value as well. Yeah. So I think that's an interesting
and easier to test, too. Easier to sort of say, well, let's see if this has a desired effect. Do you think it's important to have an internal community manager, the same way you would have an external community manager in the outward-facing social media program, a person or persons within the enterprise who are sort of the keepers of the flame with regard to this collaboration effort?
Yes, and I think it sort of depends on how you define community manager. I think in this case for the enterprise, community manager slash evangelist, it kind of blurs together. I think it's important to have people on there that are monitoring the community. They're sort of, have a good pulse on what's happening internally. They can tell if things are getting a little tense within the workplace. That are on there regularly, encouraging other employees. That see if employees do something or take a particular action on the platform. If there's a way for them to improve, somebody can reach out and say, hey, by the way, I saw that you did this. It might be more effective if instead of putting that here, maybe you create a group for your company, and here's how you do that. So somebody that's part evangelist, part community manager, part trainer and educator, I think that role is definitely very important within the enterprise.
You talk in the book about three sort of reasons why this doesn't happen, sort of three pockets of resistance in companies, and it's resistance amongst managers, resistance amongst the actual users, and then resistance amongst the IT department who don't want to deal with the software. Which of those is sort of most common or most insidious?
Oh, it's tough. I think every company at the end of the day always experiences some sort of employee/user resistance, always. I mean, those are probably the conversations that I have quite a bit. But at the same time, the IT resistance and the manager resistance is something that typically happens early on, where, before anything is even launched, they obviously, IT needs to get behind it. In a lot of cases, IT needs to get behind it, and managers need to support it, unless it's, very much a grassroots effort in which employees are just, doing things because they can. Because nowadays it's so easy to just deploy something like a box or a wiki, credit card, $20 a month, you're up and running. So I think all three of those types of resistance exist within companies, especially if you're looking for an enterprise-wide deployment. But at the end of the day, the biggest challenge that I think a lot of organizations have is how do we get people on board using these tools and using these platforms. Yeah. So I would say that is the most applicable towards all companies. Like that's the common thread that they all have. How do we get employees to use these tools and participate?
And is it typically an issue that people just don't want to do anything because, hey, look, I'm okay with email or the status quo doesn't bother me? Or is it that people at this point have gone off the reservation and are already doing their own kind of grassroots box, or we set up a small Yammer install just for our division, or they've kind of got their own skunkworks kind of program?
So both. Some employees say that they don't have the time. Some employees say that they are already overwhelmed with new technologies. So, it really varies. But if you look at an enterprise and you think of an employee that already has to have access to multiple platforms, multiple usernames, multiple passwords, and all of a sudden you say, by the way, here's a new collaboration platform for you to use. Of course they're going to look at you like you're nuts, right? We already have so many things that we need to access. Why do we need something else? But if you can make that collaboration platform the front door to the enterprise, meaning that you log into this one platform,
single sign-on,
and that's all you need to do, exactly, single sign-on, then it makes it a lot more efficient and a lot more valuable and a lot more practical to the enterprise. So it really depends how you position it and how you actually make this work within your company. One of the things that I also talk about in the book is positioning this as individual value versus corporate value. So, if we worked together at a company and I was a manager and I came to you and I said, hey, Jay, we're going to deploy this collaborative tool because it's going to make the company more money and it's going to help us save more money. You'd be like, yeah, all right, yeah, whatever. But if I came to you and said, look, we're going to deploy this tool because I think it's going to help you become more efficient at work. It's going to help you make your job easier. It's going to give you a greater work-life balance. Positioning it as individual value, how it impacts you, how it affects you, it becomes much more real to employees. So, it's not just on the technology side, but it's how it's being positioned, it's how it's being integrated, it's how this is being thought out, and what it's being considered. If you look at this as just kind of a project or an addition, chances are it's going to be a little bit difficult. But if you look at this as sort of a corporate strategic initiative on how the company is going to do business in the future, then it becomes much more clear in terms of how you need to position it, how you need to brand it and market it internally, and how you're going to get employees to use these different types of tools.
Awesome. You talked about just a little bit in the book, but it was fascinating to me just because of my background in digital marketing, this notion of social email, that some of these collaboration tools can obviously take some email off your plate because some of that messaging goes into the tool, Yammer being probably an example that most people are familiar with. But there's some other socialized email elements that are possible as well. Can you talk a little bit about how that works and what the upside is of that?
Sure. So I think there are two types of platforms that we have today. We have platforms that are looking to pull you away from email, that are basically saying, you don't need email anymore. You can do all that sort of stuff on this platform. And there are other platforms, although I can only think of one off the top of my head, that are integrating within email, within Outlook. Meaning they say, we understand that you're in Outlook all the time. We understand that that's where you do most of your work in your business and where you communicate. We're going to create this plugin in your sidebar in Outlook that gives you the capability to do all your collaborative things within Outlook. So you can access SharePoint, post status updates, find subject matter experts, all within Outlook. So you never need to leave Outlook. So it really depends on the approach that you take. Some vendors are betting that email is going to go away or diminish, and other vendors are saying that email is always going to be there, and you might as well make the best of it. So it really depends on who you talk to, as far as the email debate goes.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly seems on the enterprise side that to suggest that email is going to go away is a little bit of a long shot. I think it's easier to say we don't need email anymore in a smaller company. And as we're taping this, the rumors are afoot, of course, about Microsoft buying Yammer for a giant truckload of money, and it certainly seems like that would be their play, right? To bolt Yammer into Outlook and say, look, you don't need, I know you've heard all about these Google apps, you probably were thinking about that, but look, we've got this together. It's going to be amazing in SharePoint, and it's all together. It's a very interesting strategic play for them.
Oh yeah, I totally agree, and it's funny because I actually thought that Microsoft would have acquired a company called NewsGator, which is basically taken SharePoint and made it a good product. So the Yammer thing is actually quite interesting to see if they'll actually, if it's going to go through and what that's going to look like. But at the same time, from what I've been hearing, Yammer also has issues in terms of being able to convert their premium user base. So they actually don't have very many paid subscribers. I think they're still under 1 million or so. Whereas you look at SharePoint, and SharePoint has 40 million paid licenses.
Yeah.
So Yammer's issue, but Yammer has a lot of premium subscribers. So their issue is how do we take all these freemium people and get them to become paid subscribers and start using our product. But I totally agree. I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens. And it's funny because what we've seen in the industry, we've seen a lot of these niche players, right? When Yammer started focusing originally only on microblogging, and we had vendors like Confluence focus specifically on wikis. And so we had all these very niche players that focused specifically on their features and capabilities, and then all of a sudden they all started broadening out. Right? So Yammer added all these capabilities. Wikis now do all these other things. And now we no longer have individual niche players. We have platforms that sort of do everything.
Yep.
And now we're seeing a lot of the big vendors start to acquire these platforms. And so eventually, we'll probably be left with like the Microsoft Jives, IBMs, Oracles,
Salesforce.
And yeah, exactly. And in the whole grand scheme of the whole social business collaboration space, in a couple of years, people might not even remember what Yammer was if Microsoft buys it. They're always just going to be like, yeah, it's a Microsoft product.
Yep.
Yammer? What's Yammer?
Yep.
Because we're in this like very, very ephemeral like blip of the social business space where things are just trying to get figured out, and eventually everything's going to find its place. Everything will sit down, and we'll just move forward from there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it'll be very interesting to see as far as like what the future of email is going to look like. Whether it's going to turn into just being like an alert system or an alert notification, kind of like a pager, where whenever any type of activity happens on a collaboration platform, you might just get notified about it by email, but you won't actually respond.
Almost the way Facebook does today, right? Somebody has commented on somebody's tagged you, somebody has what have you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And all you do, you go into your email and you say, oh, somebody got a tag. But then you go onto Facebook, and that's where you actually do all your activity and respond and comment and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So it'll be very interesting to see what happens there.
Well, I think, sir, you are on the right side of history. If people are tossing around billion-dollar numbers in the collaboration software space, you being the chronicler of the space with the first great book about enterprise collaboration, I think you timed it just right. It's a really good book if you have interest in this whole internal social business, getting people on the same page of the playbook area. It is really, really, really fascinating. It's a great book. It is comprehensive, amazing. It's a reference that you will turn back to again and again. You have done all of us a service.
Thank you. The goal was to use this as kind of like a stepping stone for other people to build off of, and hopefully there will be future versions of the book. But it's really designed as as an executive or a leader, if you're interested in deploying collaborative tools and technology within your company, where do you start? What do you need to know? All that sort of stuff. Try to include in the book. So hopefully it'll be a valuable resource for people that read it.
Yeah, and good point about future versions. This is the kind of book that you could knock out, a new one every 12, 18 months and just keep updating it with different, state of the union technologies. Well done.
And I tried very hard to make it completely vendor agnostic, so that would be so the book would be kind of a long-standing strategy guide and a strategy. Yep. So rarely are any vendors mentioned in there at all. It's really about how to make this stuff work from the strategy side. So I hope that part is what makes it very attractive to organizations.
Well, I certainly liked it. Thank you very much for the time. Congratulations on it and all the great work you guys are doing at Chess. It's an exciting period, and I don't want your job, the dealing with 200,000 organizations and making them adopt the same software. I'm gonna leave that to the professionals, and I'm gonna do my thing.
Send them over to me. I'd love to talk to them.
You got it. Thanks, Baer. Good to see you.
All right. Talk to you soon.